We're going to do the questioning as we always do. We have journalists on this side. We have financial analysts on this side, and we've got a wonderful group of shareholders in the audience. So we're going to alternate among these groups, and we will keep doing that until noon, and then we'll pick up where we left off at 1 o'clock and continue doing it. And we will start off with Carol Loomis of Fortune magazine.
Good morning. I'll make my 2 or 3 sentence introductory remarks. First, Becky and Andrew and I get hundreds, if not thousands, of questions, and we can only ask a few, so if we didn't get to your question, please excuse us. Secondly, Warren and Charlie got no hint of what we were going to ask, though they read the news like we do, and that may explain that they would sometimes get a thought about what they were going to get asked, and that will explain my first question. The question is from Will Elridge of New York City, and he says, Mr. Buffett, this is a question about Berkshire's holdings in Coca-Cola. This spring, Coke asked shareholders to approve a magnanimous stock option program for its executives. Asked about it by the press after the vote, you said the program was excessive. Yet you did not tell the world prior to the Coke shareholders meeting that you believed the program to be excessive, a disclosure that, had it been made earlier, might have made shareholders vote against it. And in fact, you did not vote Berkshire shares against the plan. You only abstained in the voting. I guess you had your reasons. I must say I don't expect to agree with them, and I cannot see how they can stand up under examination. But I still would like to know why you engaged in this very strange, un-Buffett-like behavior. So why did you abstain rather than voting no against a corporate action that deserved to be shouted down?
Yeah. Well, some people incidentally think that strange and un-Buffett-like are really not quite right. As strange is frequently Buffett-like. The proposal.
Es que le están acusando de no ser como Buffett cuando él es Buffett, ¿no? Y entonces dice, pues, qué raro que.
Was made by a shareholder who had owned shares for a long time and was opposed to the option program. His calculations, and I probably should have said it, but his calculations as the dilution were wildly off, and we did not care to get into a discussion of that or anything else. But we did talk, or I did talk, to Muhtar Kent, and I informed him that we were going to abstain. I told him that we admired enormously the Coca-Cola company, we admired the management, and we thought the compensation plan, although it was very similar to a great many plans, was excessive. And Muhtar and I had a very good discussions right here in Omaha, as a matter of fact, as well as a couple of telephone discussions. And then immediately after the vote, I announced that we had abstained and gave the reasons that we thought the plan was excessive. And I think that in terms of having an effect on the Coca-Cola compensation practices, as well as maybe having an effect on some other compensation practices, that is the most effective, was the most effective way of behaving for Berkshire. We made a very clear statement about the excessiveness of the plan, and at the same time, we in no way went to war with Coca-Cola. We had no desire to go to war with Coca-Cola, and we did not endorse some calculations that were wildly inaccurate and joined forces with someone that I had really no contact with. I mean, I received several letters in the mail after they'd first been given to the press, so I think you have to be, I don't think going to war is a very good idea in most situations, and I think if you're going to join forces in going to war with somebody, you better be very sure about what that alliance might mean. So I think the best result for the Coca-Cola company was achieved by our abstention, and we will see what happens in terms of compensation between now and the next meeting of Coke. Charlie?
I think you handled the whole situation very well.
Bueno, no me fijé si la traducción del inglés de los subtítulos es muy precisa. Creo que no, ahí es un problema, pero le están preguntando por qué en una votación de un plan de compensación para los directivos de Coca-Cola que les daban unas opciones, decidió abstenerse cuando debió haberse portado más Buffett, ¿no? Y él dice que los que estaban en contra estaban haciendo unas proyecciones de que se iba a diluir de forma excesiva y Berkshire no estaba de acuerdo. Entonces ellos prefirieron abstenerse y después de la votación hacer una declaración, porque él dice que no vale la pena entrar en una guerra contra Coca-Cola cuando llevan muchos años creyendo que son una compañía excelente y una gerencia excelente. Entonces dice, si vas a ir a la guerra, pues asegúrate de que sabes lo que estás haciendo y de que tienes una convicción muy clara de lo que quieres. Y en este momento lo que él hizo es actuar en el mejor de los intereses de Berkshire, como dejar muy claro que no estaba de acuerdo con el plan de compensación con sus propias figuras, pero no estorbar al resultado, y le cree él que puede darle un tiempo de 1 año para ver cómo se desarrolla este plan. Es lo que yo entendí, ¿no? Y creo que eso va a ser como parte de lo interesante. Y luego Charlie le dice, pues lo hiciste muy bien, y a todo el mundo esperando una respuesta muy sabia, pero parece que sí es una buena respuesta.
And Charlie remains vice chairman. Charlie, incidentally, Charlie was the only one with whom I talked over the vote before, or the abstention before I did it. I called Charlie and told him about the plan, and we agreed on the course of action. I should point out one thing, and in fairness to David Winters, who led the war, he took figures from the Coca-Cola proxy statement, so it's hard to fault him for that. But for those of you who would like to know how to think about calculating dilution, Coca-Cola has regularly repurchased the shares that are issued through options, and the share count has thereby come down just a small bit at Coca-Cola, not anywhere near as much as if they hadn't issued as many shares, though, and repurchased shares. But Coca-Cola has a plan that involves 500 million shares, and they say in the annual report that they expect to issue these over approximately 4 years, and then they have a further calculation between performance shares and option shares, but I'll leave that out, make this a little simpler. And that's a lot of shares. Let's assume for the moment that Coca-Cola is selling around $40 a share now, which it is, and that all the options are issued at 40, and that when they're exercised, we'll say the stock is $60. Now at that point, there has been a $10 billion transfer of value, $20 a share times 500 million shares, a $10 billion transfer of value. Now, the company, when that is done, gets a tax deduction and for $10 billion, and at the present tax rates, that would result in $3.5 billion of less tax. So if you take $20 billion of proceeds from exercise of the options and you add $3.5 billion of tax savings, the Coca-Cola company receives $23.5 billion. And if they should buy in the stock at $60 a share, which it would be selling for then, they would be able to buy 391,666,666 shares. So, in effect, the Coca-Cola company net would be out a little over 108 million shares, and that's on a base of 4 billion. So the dilution, assuming all the proceeds from the option exercise and the tax refund were used to buy shares, the dilution would be 108 million shares on 44.4 billion, or about 2.5%. And I don't like dilution, and I don't like 2.5% dilution. But it's a far cry from the numbers that we're getting tossed around. It's a long explanation, but I've never seen the math written about. I mean, I've seen people throwing out claims and all of that. And you can change my supposition from 60 to 55 or 65. It doesn't change things very much.
Él dice que el ejercer el programa sería una dilución del 2.5%, o sea que hubiera 2.5% más acciones que diluirían a la persona que tiene una acción, su valor en 2.5%, pero él no le gusta que ocurra esta dilución, pero no es tan grande como lo que decían los contrarios al programa. O sea, él decía, no están siendo realistas y nada más están haciendo política.